responsibility. These were to be their guidelines. And so we get into chapter 21, and then this brings up a subject that's well, how shall I say it? It could be quite sensitive, and that is, well, let's get reading. Let's read first 6 verses of chapter 21, because this is the.
Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. If thou buy a Hebrew servant 6 years, he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master had given him a wife, and she had borne him sons or daughters, the wife or her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. How far you say?
Through 6.
And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him into the judges, and he shall also bring him to the door, or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his
And his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. Any feedback on what God is saying here?
I think God looks after both of them. God loves everybody, you see. And he's got, even if there's a slave or even a person who's locked up in prison, God is still looking after that guy or that person.
Mm-hmm.
So he's taking care of 2 things at one time: the person that owns a slave and the slave himself. So he will make sure that everything is done right. Man made up all this other stuff, having a slave or
let me ask this question. Why is God even giving any rules about slaves or servants?
Why is he giving the rules?
Yeah, why? It should say at the top, we would say at the top of thou shalt have no slaves.
Well, he doesn't want slaves.
Okay.
But the thing about it, man's
hard-headed,
and he's going to have who he wants. But God put the conditions on it.
Right.
And it could change the person who enslaved him.
And I think you headed in the right direction. There's a reason why God makes rules about certain things that just like, why? It's because of the hard-heartedness of people. He made rules about divorce. He made rules about some other things that we'll run into, but particularly slavery, being that this was countenanced in this country for a long time. It's like, and some people say, well, there's slaves in the Old Testament, so why not have slaves now? But really, the purpose, these rules were to get to free slaves over a period of time. Now, what are some of the reasons why people may have become enslaved? Or become servants of somebody else?
Okay, well, even everybody, I don't think a person should say they deserve it. That would include all of us, because we all have done wrong, have come short of the glory of God, But man's minds, the evilness the devil puts within him, And he looks over there and see, that man's got a slave. Maybe I'll give me one.
Mm-hmm. Doing my work.
Yeah. So, the thing is, the evilness in the world in which we live in, that we sometimes copycat. People see that and say, well, that can go for me too. I can do those things if I can get by with it.
But yeah, as was pointed out, this was a habit. This was a cultural practice. But God was actually
Right.
wanting to say, after 6 years, you need the choice. And often in those days, and there's some other stories in the Bible where people were so poor that they sold their children into, to be servants or to be slaves. That servants is another word that doesn't sound quite as harsh, because a servant at least had certain. If you're working for somebody as an employee, usually there's some basic, either basic compensation rules. You're going to get housing and food. You may not get any money, but at least you can at least get something to eat. It was mentioned about the prodigal son, how he, after his money ran out, he joined himself to a man of the area and fed the pigs. That was his job, to feed the pigs. But he wasn't given hardly enough, that to the point where he was ready to eat pig feed, just to survive. He was looking at that pig. That pig's eating better than I am, and so his situation was pretty desperate. But what God was saying, if you're going to do certain things, this is the limits of how you should at least do it humanely, fairly, and then give the this is not a lifetime thing unless you agree to it, as in verse 6. And in that case, it was an example where the master gave the servant or the slave a wife. Now, he could have said, well, no, I'm going to wait until my 6 years are up, and then I'll get my wife and my children. But because he took that on as part of his employee, as one of his employee benefits, so to speak, that the master provided. But so instead of looking at these as how shall I say, as opportunities to do certain things, these were actually to curb what had been terrible practices, because the Hebrews were in slavery at least 40 years and longer, because that was actually 80 years, because by the time Moses was born, slavery was already in place. And for 40 years, he was in Egypt, learning to be prince of Egypt. And then he tried to free his people from slavery. And then he has another 40 years following the sheep. So it's 80 years that we know of. And obviously there was actually a period before Moses was born that slavery was in place. So that was 80 years plus of they had no choice. And so this 6-year rule is like, whoa, we got off easy. A lot of people were, well, as I mentioned, were sold into slavery either because they owed somebody and couldn't pay them. So I'll work for you until I can get this debt paid off. Or they would sell off their children to be servants. So God, instead of condoning slavery, God was trying to curb it and get people, get them on an upward path. Right. And so, but some people sadly use this as, well, God had talked about slaves, so we can have slaves, and so on and so forth.
We can guarantee, we are guaranteed, let's put it that way, anything that God says to do, man, and I'm speaking generally, will make it bad. If God said for me to be kind to you, Satan's going to step in and put things in my mind, my head, and all that kind of stuff to be mean to you. And it's the same way with slavery, back in the time of slavery.
Right, or use kindness to put somebody into obligation. Mm-hmm. I'll be kind to you, but you got to do some favors for me. It's like lobbyists in Washington. I'll give you some money for your campaign, but you got to walk the line on this and this and this legislation or whatever. Or I'll be kind to you, to try to climb the ladder of in corporate world, particularly between male and female, use certain things to either climb the ladder or open the next rung of the ladder, and abuse people in a way they should not be abused. But some people use what they have to try and so it can work both ways. But sadly, so kindness, love, all these things, as you say, can be corrupted and turn to an evil purpose. Let's move on to this, and quite a few things we got. If you read, Sunday talks about more laws. We could kind of briefly go through, talks about, continue on in chapter 21, talks about female slaves and male slaves, and how, under certain circumstances, how this works or should not work, then we have laws about violence and there's different levels of violence. It's kind of like in this day, there's different classes of felonies, different classes of felonies, and there's misdemeanors. And so you don't treat. Battery went out. Oh no. Okay, it's back. So I know for some reason the mic seemed to go in and out. So there's different, there's premeditated murder, if there's accidental death, if there's death, you get into a fight, and then there's a relationship between parents and children, and so on, all down the way. Now we're going hot. Exodus 21 verses 24 and 23 and 24. Would somebody read that in chapter 21? Now the sound is going crazy.
But if any harm follows them, you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot.
And then it says burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe, and so on. What is going on? What do you think of that? Eye for eye, tooth for tooth.
Is that God's law or man's made law?
Well, this is God. This is the laws that God was giving to the children of Israel. It's laws along the same line as laws on slavery. Now, you're not feeling it? Okay.
I can see that side of God. Maybe it is, but I don't see it.
You don't see it?
No.
And for a long time, I didn't see it. But let me run the scenario through. When the Palestinians broke out of Gaza and ransacked villages and killed people and so on and so forth, that was a terrible thing. 1,300 people plus lost their lives. Some buildings were burned and so on and so forth. Now, as a retribution or as a consequence, Israel comes into Gaza, kills perhaps 30,000 people so far, displaced millions of people, destroyed many homes. Is that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? That's went way beyond an eye and eye. There's more than 1,300 people have been killed in Gaza. Huh?
Did they do this on their own, or did God tell them to do that?
Well, you mean what's happening currently?
Know what you just said.
Well, that's what's happening currently. That's in October 23, the Palestinians broke out and then killed 1,300 plus Israelite, people of Israel. They may have been up different and then kidnapped a couple hundred, perhaps 250 or so.
So
And then-
this happened recently, is that what you're saying?
This happened in the last 2 years. It's going on right
You
now.
think God told them to do that?
No. I'm giving you an example of, and then Israel comes back into Gaza, basically destroys at least 50% of the dwelling. It looks like maybe more than that. Has killed 30,000 people and injured perhaps many more than that. Is that one eye for one eye, one tooth for one tooth?
I have, anybody else want to talk?
I have a problem with that because they're allowing, saying that God told me to do that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying,
Okay.
giving that as an example. The
Oh.
Israelites had, this is the law given to the Israelites.
Okay.
This is in Judaism. This is the law. I think my microphone.
Yeah.
Brother Roy, good to see you. All right. Do you have a lesson quarterly or you need one? I got some spares up here if you want to follow along. Okay. All right. What I'm trying to say is when humans do justice, often they go way beyond. Now, the law of the jungle is that you steal my chicken and I'll steal your pig. You steal my pig, I'm going to kidnap one of your kids. You kidnap one of my kids, I'm going to come in and destroy your village. If you destroy my village, it's going to be all-out war. Humans in their reaction, if you cut me off on the highway, I'm going to pull out my gun and shoot you. Is that just because I got a little close to you? That's an example of one tooth. I take out your whole mouth, and if you take out my whole mouth, well, I'm going to kill you. And it's to keep justice at a point of where it doesn't get out of hand. And so when people are doing things that are not based on love, if I steal my neighbor's cow, well, you can't go over and take his whole herd, but you have to do some restitution. And if you follow the laws, that's basically 1 for 1, or maybe if you take one cow, you got to restore and kill that cow and whatnot. You got to restore a couple back, for example, like the Zacchaeus was a wee little man. Remember, he was the tax collector, and he said, whoever I've stolen from or taken from, I'll restore, and under certain circumstances, restore 4 times. And so, but what this tooth-to-tooth thing is to keep people from going overboard with their retribution or their vengeance or their seeking for justice. And so, but actually Jesus, but that's just step 1. That's the bottom or the worst that things should happen. But we know they happen a whole lot worse. Yeah, puts limits on what people are in their. Exactly. And so you're saying justice should be justice, not retribution plus, and plus vengeance, plus anger, plus the whole 9 yards. Okay.
You're saying,
Yeah.
that if someone does something to me,
Mhm.
I have a right to do whatever back to them they was doing, then they get me. Are you saying that?
That's what this is saying, but it's not what I'm trying to get at. It's to curb people's tendency to go overboard as Sister Rhonda, and we see it today. We see.
Is that even give it back a little bit, isn't that too much?
In the spirit of Christ, that is too much, and we'll get to that. Jesus came and said, "You've heard eye for an eye and tooth for tooth," but I'm saying we need to step up from the what you might call basic justice, what is fair justice. If all you're about is justice, then the only justice you can only get one tooth for one tooth. You're not going to kill that. I'm not going to uphold you killing that person because he took out your tooth. I'm not going to uphold if you cut somebody off that the other person has the right to shoot you and dead.
I still don't understand it. I mean, I understand what you're saying,
Right.
but I just can't see God said to do this
Uh,
because
let-
we're evil. The world is evil.
Right.
It's evil. So if God said I can do that, could I make a mistake and do it worse than what he told me?
Well, that's why I put limits on it. No, I understand the dilemma, because Jesus spoke, or the Lord, just in early part of the chapter, spoke about having servants and how you treat your servants. And I said, well, at the top of that chapter, it should have said, don't have servants. But the problem was that people were going to have servants, in spite of what God is God's ultimate plan. But there's also a tendency for humans to ignore that plan. And so then if somebody ignores that plan and somebody else wants justice, they can only go so far with their justice. And that was the point there. We should have some...
I just can't understand that because we're not the person to do the justice.
I know.
That's the part that I never heard this before. That if you come and hit me, I'll come back and hit you. But
But
maybe not as hard as you hit me.
now, what do you get the picture that God is trying? He's talking to a bunch of hard-hearted first graders, and so if I steal a pencil from you, you can only get that pencil back. It's not that they should have stolen it from you, or you can say, okay, yeah, you can have the pencil. I got plenty of pencils. I'm fine. If you need that pencil, that's when Jesus came and said, if somebody compels you to go 1 mile, he says, you go the extra mile. If somebody needs a cloak and takes yours, okay, if you guess you need it worse than I did. But Jesus, that is growth. That is growth in Christianity. But these laws that God gave to the children of Israel were the, I don't know what the best term is.
Well, the people were before the Holy Spirit. And when Jesus came, we had the Holy Spirit to temper us. But back then, there were laws.
Right. And then, we also got to understand that they were slaves in Egypt for several hundred years. And so they were coming out of, how shall I say it, a different way, a different culture. And God was trying to say, okay, to preserve you from destroying each other, with the laws of the jungle, I'm going to set some basic laws of justice, that there's only one tooth for one tooth, isn't it? Now, Jesus says, turn the other cheek. What he said, that is a growth, that is a principle of growth, as opposed to like on the books, in the civil law, and then there's laws that reflect the character of God. These do that justice should be should be tempered with limits. Okay. All right. We will right. No. But how often have we gotten into discussions about had a disagreement and people get louder, louder, and louder and get more out? Now I know.
But they also had a tendency for heathenism too, because of what they come out of.
Right, and so
They didn't listen to laws and rules and things like that. They had this heathenism in them at the time. So God had to find a way to.
he
On his own.
He could have.
He used us to get people.
not just
Okay, go ahead, go ahead. That's
No.
what I'm hearing, that's what I'm hearing.
Now, what I'm getting at, the human tendency, I gave you the example of Israel and Gaza. That is the human tendency. You burn a few of my houses, you kill 1,300 plus people. What does Israel do? They've killed 30 plus thousand people and destroyed way more many homes than ever was done in Israel. And there's a lot of noise about the hostages, and that's a terrible thing. But how many Palestinians have been locked up without due process in Israel's prisons? When they have prison swaps, there's maybe half a dozen Israelis and 1,000 Palestinians. Well, what were these Palestinians doing in Israel's jail? They were just hauled off the street without due process often, and without much hope of getting out. And so people tend to look at things from just one side. But what God is saying with the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth principle, not that you need to get that other eye, but that's as far as you can go and do things justly. If all you consider is justice without mercy, that's as far as you can go. And that's what some people are all about, is I want justice. Mercy would say, yeah, I mean, taking your eye out, even though you took my eye out, taking your eye out, it's not going to get my eye back. That's where forgiveness comes in and says, I don't like it. I don't like what you did to me, but I forgive you, and we move on. And that's how we keep from destroying each other. So we got to understand, when God is giving instructions, there is what is allowable. It's kind of like the health laws. There's what God allowed you to eat, but then there's what God's original diet, for example, in Eden. You understand the difference between the two? Okay. But anyway, we're in Exodus chapters 21, 22, and did I ever give you a study book? Okay. And so we're looking at some of the laws that God gave, and it appears on the surface, why is God talking about slaves? Why is he talking about tooth for a tooth, or some of these things? But he was giving them civil laws so that at least they could live civilly and not destroy each other on the way to what Jesus had to offer. That is what a lot of these laws were about. So that was Monday's lesson.
No matter if it's a thou shalt not kill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's more in the Bible on that. Thou shalt not kill,
Well, Jesus' thought was, if you have hate for your brother, in our natural self, that's true.
So that's what I'm saying. If the Bible says thou shalt not kill, that's a period behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, unless.
Right.
I
No,
Well, I think we forget that the Israelites came from a nation or nationality, you want to call it that took the laws in their hands, so to speak. What God is trying to teach them is the way that He ordained it to be, but because of their heart, He's trying to do it in a manner that will reach to their heart without it being an overbearing burden. We naturally want to do somebody steal from you. It's in your nature to want to take back what was stolen and even more.
mm-hmm.
But what God is trying to do is take that out of our system and direct it in a different manner,
Right.
so that it's not a manner of hurt, but a manner of uplifting uplifting. So that's why when he did the original law, He did it because of where they were at that time. Their
Right.
mindsets at that time was on worshiping idols and, all the things that they were doing. So now he has to break that out of them so that he can get them to where he wants them to be.
Right. And so that's when we look at these laws, we got to say this is the basic of what you should do. But actually, as we grow in Christ, we actually grow into love our neighbors. We do good for our neighbors. No, sis.
They're just a guideline, but when the Holy Spirit comes in, he opens the guidelines so you have a better understanding of what that guideline mean. Okay, the guideline says thou shalt not kill. Okay, good. We know it's a period, but our natures, that's ingrained in us. So that's why he said if they slap you on your right cheek, turn your left cheek. We, well, I don't know about Americans, but Caribbean people, that doesn't fly in the face. So for you to say something like that, that's where the Holy Spirit has to come in and soften the heart so that you don't get to the point where you would go and do that if that situation arises.
Right. Tuesday goes on to, before we get, because Wednesday and Thursday is powerful too. God's original plan. So we have various laws regarding violence, animals, responsibility for property. This is chapter 22. Then there's various other laws that God gave. Basically, it's a breaking down of the Ten Commandments in a granular level day by day situations or circumstances. On to chapter 23. This one's a good one. Thou shalt not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. With the internet, I mean, almost every 90% of the emails that are either my junk mail or even in my regular mail are schemes to try and get money out of you and using either false claims or false suggestions. If you were to follow, every email and click on it and subscribe to whatever you'd be broke pretty quick. And so this whole idea of what we call these days fake news, or what are some of the other terminologies? I can't think of them right now, but basically, or conspiracy theories of why things are happening the way they are happening and so forth. We got to be aware that the devil is a liar and a deceiver, and that's what he uses to promote his kingdom, and is the use of fear, falsehoods, deceptions, sheep and wolf's clothing type of methodologies. And so I thought that was interesting. Do not circulate false reports. And how many false reports these days are circulated, maybe about your health? If you buy this concoction, that'll give you more energy. You're going to look younger. This will make you look like you're 40 instead of 60, and so on and so forth. These are all false reports, but it's all usually to make money. And so then it goes into when you shall not follow a crowd to do evil. How often is things done by mob violence, or using a mob to then commit violence? What was a peaceful protest about something then becomes a riot. And so you got to be careful about following the crowd or following the majority, because often the majority don't have it right. And it keeps on going down the list. But we'll move on to 23 verses, starting at verse 20. So Exodus 23, verse 20. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you in the place that I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Do not provoke him, and he will not pardon your transgressions. For my name is in him, and this is often believed to be the when Jesus was in the angelic form before he took on humanity. But that's another point of discussion or point of understanding. But what we read in these next few verses, if you do in verse 22, if you do indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies, an adversary to your adversaries. In other words, God was going to be with them and protect them from those who were his enemies. For my angel will go before you and bring you to the Amorites, bring you and the Perizzites and the Hittites and the Canaanites and Hivites and Jebusites, and they will be cut off. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their works, but you shall utterly overthrow them. And it continues on down. Verse 27, I will send my fear before you, and I will cause confusion among all the people to whom you come, and will make them make all your enemies turn their backs on you. So God, this appears to be, God's going to kick all these people out. If you go back to the story of Abraham, God promised Abraham this land, but he said wasn't done dealing with the nations that were there. God was still working with them to deal with their corruption, their idol worship, and so on. But they had come to the point where they had corrupted the land to the point where they were self-destructing, you might say, or destroying themselves. And so God was going to prepare the way to he even said he would drive them out using hornets. In other words, the insects would be so stirred up that would cause them the people to move out, and the Israelites could move in. But yeah, there's a lot involved in that. The lesson says it was not God's intentions for the Israelites to get involved with a sword killing battle. That wasn't for the Israelites to fight for their new territory. It was to be given them, and it had been promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is on Tuesday. And it says here, the model for the conquest of the promised land was demonstrated during the crossing of the Red Sea. God fought for his people and gave them total victory over those planning to kill them. So God provided protection and provided a way through the Red Sea. The Battle of Jericho is another example of how God wanted for them to take over the land. It wasn't intended to be battle after battle after battle and people losing their lives. But as humans, they wanted to do some of it themselves, or do all of it themselves. Let us go on to Wednesday, and we'll deal with the other side of the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We'll go to Matthew chapter 5. This is the Sermon on the Mount, which lays out a lot of the principles of God's kingdom, how it ultimately should work. One thing we got to understand is that God meets us where we're at, but he does not leave us where we're at. He wants to lift us up out of the mess that we're in. And so the story of the children of Israel is that journey from out of their mess, their slavery, their bondage, to the promised land. But for them to be prepared for the promised land, he had to set down the laws and the rules or the way they should operate with one another. But Jesus came to then pick them up from where they're at, living by the law, to be living by the law of love. And that's where the Sermon on the Mount comes in. Would somebody read verses 30? Well, we'll start with 38 through 42, and then we'll carry on from there.
Ye have heard that it been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him on the other also.
Okay, just hold up a second there, because I think we missed the word. It says, but I tell you not to resist an evil person. In other words, to get in a fist fight with them. Carry on. But whosoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other to him also. Keep on to verse 40.
Verse 39.
Right.
And if any man will sue thee at law and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him, asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. How far did you say?
No, that's it. I'll read in the New King James, verses 40 to 42. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Verse 42, give to him that asks of you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away.
Read that 43. That's the most important.
Well, we'll get that in just a minute.
Okay.
But we're addressing the eye for an eye and a
Okay.
tooth for a tooth situation. What was Jesus trying to get them? What was he trying to get through in this illustration or in this particular saying?
I think what he's trying to get to the people, don't do to people same thing that they do bad to you. In other words, do good to them.
Right.
You know, if I'm telling you, we hurt God every day. We hurt him about every day in something. It could be small, big, whatever it is. So do we turn around and hurt God? Does he turn around and hurt us? No.
Nothing to the extent that we do.
Okay, so therefore he's not going to teach us to hurt each other because you have hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to do that. He said we should love one another as I have loved you.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, God is about love, Love.
Right.
He's not about destruction, destroying, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the devil does. He puts it in our mind to go get the gun, shoot that person to hurt you, or whatever the situation is. So I think we're judging to do wrong by the devil, to do right what God says.
Say that again. Didn't quite get
Yes, right.
Very
And that's where we have to be very careful because the devil's on us all the time.
Mhm.
And then when we get locked up, if that's the case, he sits back and laughs. He's happy what
Oh,
he
yeah.
did. He won.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying. But what Jesus was trying to do is get us to grow from just living by the law, by the minimum that I didn't kill my neighbor today, but I sure gave him the evil eye and cursed his dog out. And actually, I feel like shooting that dog because he's barking all night. And then when he lights up the trash in his backyard, it smokes me out. And, oh, man.
But is that what we should have? Should we have that?
Huh?
Should we do that?
No.
Definitely not.
But the tendency is to, well, if he's burning and smoking me out, I'm going to burn his house down so he's not going to be there anymore. And his dog keeps barking.
And
Well, there's one way to fix that.
And that's
And
evil.
That's
That's-
evil.
That's evil.
And that so God wants to turn us around rather than continuing the cycle or worsening the cycle, to actually heal the cycle.
Right.
He wants us to
All right.
Well, and he wants us to respond.
If we respond in love, then we won't have
Feelings.
those feelings of
Well, you-
retaliation.
Well, if we understand that that's the only way that we can not destroy each other and actually live in harmony, but it's natural to try and get back in our natural humanity. But that's where the Spirit comes in and teaches us a better way. And when the Spirit comes in, it says, rather than hate your neighbor, love your neighbor. Well, right. And so this is a growing process. It doesn't happen instantaneously, just like with the children of Israel. They had to learn along the way, and some of them didn't learn it at all. Others did. And then Jesus takes it up another step. We'll just finish this out here in Matthew, because this is me when I first started to understand this is whoa. Somebody read verses 43 to 48 of chapter 5 of Matthew.
You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect.
Two things. First thing I want to emphasize, verse 45, 44 leading into 45, but I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to those that hate you, pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be what?